Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. We'd like to call the meeting to order. Invite everyone to please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Jim Dombeck.
Here.
Steve Nelson.
Here.
James Shiloh.
Here.
Julene Davy. Here. Michael DeVito.
Here.
Eric Jones.
Present.
Kristen Wren. Here. Quorum's present.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda as proposed? Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as proposed?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Shiloh.
Yes.
Davy.
Yes.
DeVito.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Wren.
Yes.
Dombeck.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Audience to visitors. Is there anyone in the audience this evening who wishes to address the board? Would please come down front. There's a microphone set up here. If you would state your name, and you would have 3 minutes. Please refrain from any personnel issues.
Good evening. My name is Jake Brenz, 1503 Larson Street. I wanted to respond to the informal discussion regarding audience to visitors policies and protocols that took place at the December 14th board meeting. During this discussion, it was suggested that current policies regarding visitors' rights might be revisited, including their right to cede their 3 minutes to other speakers, or even whether the board should give audience to multiple speakers conveying the same message. It was even suggested that board meetings aren't always the right time and place for these issues to be addressed. For me, and I believe for many community members, this discussion generated concerns and at least a few questions. First, if there is another venue where stakeholders can bring their concerns to the board in a manner that is both public and on the record, has that been clearly communicated to the community? Would the district consider offering regularly scheduled town hall meetings where concerned citizens could not only ask questions, but actually expect answers? Second, what is the harm in allowing visitors to cede their 3 minutes to other speakers who may need more time to adequately convey their concerns? If multiple stakeholders share the same concern, wouldn't that offer a more efficient way for that concern to be communicated? Finally, as part of that informal discussion on the 14th, it was questioned whether there was even a need to hear from multiple people if they're just going to be repeating the same concern. The answer to that would seem clear. If I were a board member, I would want to know how prevalent a concern was among my constituents. I would want to know if this was representative of just 1 or 2 people, or if it was a collective concern of 10, 20, or perhaps 283 stakeholders. As a board, you have a difficult job even under the best of circumstances. The past 2 years have altered so much of the landscape of education, and your roles have certainly not been immune to this change. As we continue to see an increase in uncivil or outright hostile discourse in public forums across the nation, it might be tempting to consider significant changes in policies that would limit audience to visitors. But I would ask you to strongly consider the unintended outcomes of doing so. Trust and transparency are vital to the health of a school district, and your work, our work, is too important to risk damaging either. But limiting the voice of the community members that you serve seems like a surefire way to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alex Grados, and I live at 1119 Susan Street in Sycamore. I would like to echo what Mr. Brennan said regarding public comments, as I was surprised that I was not able to speak at the previous board meeting, and I didn't have access to the public comment restrictions. On another note, students in this district benefit from a supportive staff. In order for a staff to provide that support, they need to be appreciated by the administration and their community. Due to the amount of outstanding teachers I've noticed leaving my school, I'm genuinely concerned that teachers don't feel valued here. This is a concern I have for students. I think it's just all these teachers leaving just has negative impacts on the students, and we need to ensure that our teachers feel supported and appreciated in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to please refrain from applause. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Dina Ray. I live at 540 Viking in Sycamore. I am mainly here tonight in support of our teachers and asking for the school board to please do everything in your power to bring resolution to the contract negotiations in a manner that dignifies them and conveys the gratitude and respect that they deserve. COVID has taken a huge toll on everyone worldwide, and our teachers have done a tremendous job tackling the difficult expectations of teaching through the pandemic and all the challenges that it encompasses. They remain positive, attentive, and committed to doing what is best for all of our students despite the obstacles that have stood in their way, and we need to all stand behind them in solidarity. I'm proud to be from Sycamore, and I just feel that we are better than this, and that should not be where we're at 160 some days without a contract. Another group that I'm concerned about are the school nurses. With the number of cases soaring and contact tracing being an overwhelming task, we need more school nurses. A friend of mine found out that her son had COVID due to a home test, and after reporting it to the school on a Monday, it was a Thursday night before anyone got back to her. I assumed that things were happening much quicker than that because our family has not had COVID, so I didn't know what the typical turnaround on that is. And I do not blame school nurses in any way. I'm certain that there is a huge, huge number for them to follow up on, and it literally probably took that long to respond. But it makes me wonder how that is impacting numbers in our students, our staff, our families, and our community. The nurses need help, and I understand that there are HIPAA laws protecting privacy, so it's not like anybody can jump in there and help them, but we need more nurses, clearly. It would also follow that we need more subs and bus drivers because of the surge of cases. I heard an example from a parent that I know that there were 18 teachers that were out with COVID or quarantining in one of the elementary schools, which I was horrified by because the schools are pretty small. And at some point, we kind of, as parents, I think, stopped hearing about how the numbers are affecting our schools. In the beginning of the pandemic, there were lots and lots of emails that there was, in the 7th grade, there were 3 people that were being quarantined. And along the way, and I'm sure that it's due to the crazy numbers of what's transpiring out there, but we don't hear anything, and maybe I am missing something, maybe it's posted somewhere that I don't know about, but at some point, we stopped hearing anything. And I know that transparency has always been important, but it seems like something fell to the wayside with that. We definitely need more subs, and I don't know if the problem is competitive wages for that. I don't know why we're having such a problem, but something needs to give. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to ask you to please refrain from applause. Thank you.
My name is Matt Anderson. I live at 1809 Broward Place. The Sycamore Education Association would like all stakeholders to know that our members want to keep our students in school throughout this long negotiation process. And that's much like we have over the last 8 years, where we have taken financial concessions in the form of pay freeze after pay freeze, and had to stretch our professional responsibilities to cover unprecedented staff reductions and growing classrooms. And that is why we are here now, still teaching, 164 days into the school year without a new contract. There is work to be done, and we want to do it. We are committed to our profession and our passion, which is education. We remain focused on fulfilling our district's mission to empower all students to succeed in their world. But let it be clear, the SEA needs a fair contract. We must continue to attract new and innovative talent who inspire and challenge, as well as retain our valued, high-quality teachers who know and nurture the traditions and culture we all know so well. We don't want to lose more staff to other districts, and we want to keep our students in school. For the benefit of our community, please find a way to push this over the finish line. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Amanda Shea, and I live at 536 Northgate Drive. I understand that the terms of the negotiations between the union and the administration are currently private, and I am doing my best to remain objective as I wait for more details. I am here today as a parent and a professional who also manages multi-million-dollar budgets. I do not envy your position, and I know firsthand how difficult it is to attract and retain the best talent during shortages pandemics, and while salaries are increasing across the nation. Myself have had to increase salaries by over 25% this year alone in 2022. I am asking you, as the leadership of this school district, and whose job it ultimately is, to ensure that not one more burden is placed on our children. They have carried enough. Way too many are taught by substitutes despite our enormous tax bills. They attend school, and then we send them to tutors to make up for their learning loss. And while I remain incredibly thankful to the teachers who are filling the shortages that are currently in the schools, my children are suffering because of it. We've handled the pandemic, we've handled remote learning, we've handled hybrid learning. Enough is enough. In the end, the strike will force your hand, but it will not be before my daughter, who happens to be a member of the undefeated girls basketball team, is forced to forfeit their first playoff game. They play February 12th. They missed playoffs last year. I am begging you to not take this opportunity from them. You have a month to get in a room and do nothing else until you figure this problem out, as Mr. Anderson just stated. They set a goal for themselves 7 years ago, and it wasn't just a goal. They created process and practice. They managed a pandemic. They dribbled in their garages. They drove to Indiana. They did everything they could to ensure that they could do this and be successful. If you take this away from them, it'll be disgusting. Please do your jobs.
Thank you.
Hi, Kristen Miller, 1780 Thoreau. District 427 is a point of pride in our community. We chose Sycamore kind of with a blind eye because of our schools. That was a big reason why we moved here in 2007. And I could speak for an hour about the teachers, coaches, staff, administrative leaders that have made school absolutely wonderful for our kids. Teachers come in early, teachers that spend their weekends helping our kids. And this is one more roadblock to hear about what could happen in this district, and it is upsetting. I also want to publicly acknowledge all of our health professionals and what other parents said about our school nurses. They're just heroes during this crazy time. So we all know about the challenges of the last 22 months, but the thought of a strike by our teachers is just, it's going to push us over the edge. So it's really more than we can handle, no matter what side of the table you're sitting on. And the parents, we see it so simply. Compensate our teachers and our staff, frankly, our frontline heroes, and keep our kids in school. Keep their activities from being canceled. I understand it's not that simple. Parents and students don't really have a voice when it comes to collective bargaining. We're reliant on the small teams that are bargaining on both sides. And I also know it's not a transparent process. Thank you to the board members that have emailed me back. I really appreciate that. And I just know that we don't want to go through, I've done my research, I know what steps need to be gone through, and I don't want to see it get to that point. Both of the sides are probably underappreciated. Teachers, absolutely, in this pandemic, but I don't want to see the board and the teachers back themselves into a corner and take away what's so great about this community. But we do have a voice tonight, and we're asking for one simple thing, and that's to stay at the table. Stay at the table until you come to a resolution and be able to communicate just a little bit more than discussions are ongoing. We're all frazzled to the nth degree, whether you're a board member or a student or a teacher or a staff member. We need to know more. Can you please share a goal for a resolution, a little bit of a timeline, and stay at the table for our community, stay at the table for our teachers, and most importantly, for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, we'll move along to the next item, communications, correspondence, informational items. Letters and newsletters. Certainly have had those. FOIA requests. They've all been answered, correct? Committee reports.
We had a Spartan Senate meeting on Friday. It was really productive. We had a nice roundtable of discussion from parents and students related to dress code, related to grading feedback and grading policy, and also discussing future agenda items that will be brought to the board. So it's nice.
I was able to attend the North Grove PTO meeting, or at least most of it last night. Just a lot of discussions about the things that PTOs deal with as far as fundraisers in a pandemic and not being able to necessarily gather a bunch of people in the winter together, especially during the current conditions indoors. So looking at ways to possibly work around that. And I've reached out to Lauren Holtz at SEF to see, because I know they have some online program that they pay for as far as fundraising to be able to do things like auctions and stuff like that, to see if maybe that's something we can make available to the PTOs who are struggling to find, ways to do their raffles and other things like that. So maybe there's some resources there that can be shared that would help all those groups collectively. There was a lot of discussion about how to show appreciation for the teachers in the building, the nurses in the building, the front office staff in the building. So there was a lot of support from the parents that were there as far as being able to help provide coffee, treats, encouraging staff to take lunches and tune out for that hour and not do work, to try and just help with that mental load. And just to kind of expand on one of the questions that was asked earlier as it relates to this, Ryan shared that in that first week back last week, if you looked at Monday through Friday, the number of kids that were out of the building, it started off at 76 on Monday, then 80, then 96. By the end of the week was 101 kids out of the building. Every one of those has to be called by the nursing staff. Every one of those has to be followed up. What are the symptoms? Who are you by? I mean, that's an enormous amount of work. And then Friday to find out that the rules have changed from IDPH, you now have to recall all of those people again. So just expanding upon just how much work that nursing staff is going through trying to get all this done. And it's not a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 sort of thing. It's working till 10, 11 o'clock at night, working weekends, trying to get this all done. And I think we need to find a way within whatever the law is requiring us to do as far as contract tracing to reduce that burden on that staff. So hopefully we've got some stuff to talk about in the next couple weeks on ways we can work around that and lessen that load. I will say the one positive piece of news he shared, and again, this was all public because it was at the PTO meeting, was that of all the close contacts, at least that North Grove had prior to Christmas break, so the first 4 months of the school year, not a single one of those close contacts ever developed and reported catching COVID. So at least as far as that isolated school for the first half of the year was concerned, there was no spread at the school district. And so far in 1 week post-break here, there haven't been any confirmed cases of it spreading in the schools, again, after, in the last week. So positive piece of news there. It kind of reinforces, and this was his statement, that the schools are the safest place to be and that there's a lot of support from not only the staff, but the teachers, but also the administrative staff there to keep kids in the classroom as long as we possibly can, and that that's the best place for them. So just wanted to share that.
Other reports? We did have a policy committee meeting, a rather lengthy one. I don't know if you've seen the packet. It's pretty thick, and it took a long time to go through. But there's a lot of new legislation that had to be accommodated, and this is just the first, I think, of many very thick packets, because the last legislative session left us with a lot of changes in the law. And that, of course, means that there's got to be changes in policy to conform with those new laws. So we'll talk a little bit more about this when we actually do the first reading. I guess would probably be at our next meeting. So, but we did meet, and it takes you quite a while to go through this packet. So I'll just forewarn you that it's not something you're going to pick up and 20 minutes later you're going to master it. So. You might want to allocate some extra time just to kind of to go through. We tried to pull out for you the new policies and policies where there were some options. There weren't that many of them.
2 or 3.
Right, but we'll try to isolate those for you so you can see. The rest are kind of formal changes to just to change sites to statutes and footnotes, some footnotes. So more on that as we go forward. Any other committee reports? Next item then would be Assistant Superintendent for HR.
We're back to our school presentations, and I'd like to invite Mr. Schrader up to talk about West Elementary and his wonderful staff. I've been fortunate to see them hard at work and how they work as a team. Ryan's often running around a million miles an hour in a normal situation, so even more so this year, and he does a great job. They work as a team, staff, like all of our buildings, step up and really help him out. Heather does a great job in the office as well, so I'm sure he's going to talk more about the students and staff. So thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. Thanks, board, for letting us come talk tonight, or letting me come talk tonight. As Mr. Reineck said, my name is Ryan Schrader. I am the building principal at West Elementary School. I'd love to say that I'm the person in charge. We all know I'm second in charge. As Nick was saying, Mrs. Ralph is definitely the one that's really in charge, my building secretary. And Mr. Young, my building custodian, is probably right up there towards the top too. So, but thanks again for having me come talk tonight. I know tonight is a spotlight on kind of West Elementary and the great things that are happening there. But I just want all of you guys to know that there are amazing things happening in each and every one of our buildings in the Sycamore School District right now. So thank you for that, and thank you to all of you guys for all the great things that are happening. So West Elementary School, currently we have 48 staff members. Our current enrollment is 271 students. Our average class size, we have 2 grade levels, or 2 classes per grade level. Our average class size is 23. I wanted to put this up there because this year we had 50 new students. That's roughly about 18% of our population, which, going back to talk about Mrs. Ralph, I had to stop at the office real quick before I came over here, and she's still there working because we just got a new student today, trying to figure out what class to put them in, things like that. We've had 7 new ones just since the new year. So, so 50 new students, and it's great to see all the new students and blending in with our staff and things like that. So, wanted to put up that just because that's a big change when you think about almost 20% of your student population is brand new to the West, not only Sycamore School District, but the West community. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is I do not come up with these. We have a building leadership team at each of the elementary buildings that we meet on a monthly schedule. And the building goals, as well as our vision statement, which I'm going to talk about next, is something that I worked very closely with our building leadership team to do what's best for our building. So the building goals that we came up for 21-22 is, number 1 is always being proactive from all staff and always being solution-driven. Number 2 is West Elementary is a student-centered learning environment where we provide individualized instruction to meet students' needs. And then be kind. That's a big one with social emotional. And I think if we could, all of our kids and all of us adults could always just be kind, we'd be in a better place. But we pride ourselves with meeting the social emotional needs of everyone in our West community. And that's very important. We have a great social worker in our building. We do a lot of second step lessons with our kids. But that goes way beyond. Our staff does a great job with talking about social emotion with kids and one another, which is, I'm very proud of these goals that we have, and my staff has been working very, very hard to make sure we accomplish these not only for the whole year, but on a daily basis as well. The next one we have is our building vision statement. This is one that's important to us too, as well as our school is a welcoming and safe environment for all. At West Elementary School, we are critical thinkers, productive citizens, and lifelong learners. And I believe that any person that comes to our door, you're going to meet staff members that have smiles on their faces, are very welcoming, and make you feel right at home, whether you're a new staff member, whether you're a parent, or whether you're a new student. This next group I want to talk about, and I'm sure, and I do apologize if there's anyone I missed. I think we've heard some speakers come up tonight, but this list that I have up here, I don't think any of us could be doing what we're doing right now without a lot of these groups that I'm gonna talk about. I know for me, personally, there's no way I could do my job without this group. And we always talk about it takes a village, and that is 100% true on a daily basis. My mornings usually start with Heather and I texting at 6 a.m. which sub are we going to put here or there. And then usually about 9:30 or 10, it's either with Heather about staffing for the next day or with the elementary principals. But first and foremost, I want to thank all of our families and students, not only at West, but in our community. Our maintenance and custodial staff, what Mr. Ekstrom's doing with his staff, whether they're out and getting into the buildings and doing the best that they possibly can to make sure that our buildings are clean, our students are safe. We really appreciate all the work that they're doing on a daily basis. Our health staff, we've been talking about that, we've heard about that. They're working around the clock. They're doing it with, they're always very friendly, smiles on their faces in the building, but they are working extremely, extremely hard. They're never not answering the phone or an email or a text message, but I'm very thankful for my health staff at West Elementary, but the health staff in general in the whole district is doing a phenomenal job, and we couldn't be doing that without them right now. Courtney and her Oscar staff has been a lifesaver. I mean, Courtney, on numerous times we've had to call them back, hey, can you come over and sub? We just had to send a staff member home. Courtney comes right over, jumps right in it, grabs the sub plans, and just takes over, and I'm really appreciative of her and Addie and the rest of her Oscar staff, because they've been super helpful, whether it's lunch duty, recess duty. We give her a call, and she's right there, so thank you to Courtney and her staff. Transportation, I know Lacey's been helping a lot with that, and Kathy Sheehan and her staff with transportation, we appreciate everything that they've been doing and working around the clock with this whole shifted schedule that we're doing and getting buses. We have one bus that comes later than the rest of the buses, but getting them there as quickly as possible and getting our students on a bus, I really appreciate all the work that they're doing right now. And I know this is taking a long time, but this group really does mean a lot right now. All the secretaries in the buildings are doing great work with figuring things out. On the drop of a hat, they're solving problems and things like that. They're all doing great. I especially thank Heather for everything that she's doing right now. Our remote tutor, Mrs. Benson, she is our remote tutor for the elementary level. She's been working around the clock, keeping us informed of what's going on, doing a great job contacting parents, working with classroom teachers, and then doing Google Meets with students throughout the day who are quarantined. So she's been doing a great job, and we really appreciate her. The paraeducators, we all know we're short with paraeducators this year, but the ones that we do have been working extremely, extremely hard, and I'm very thankful and grateful for all of them, for all the work that they're doing and jumping in and helping out wherever they can. It's not as of a fixed schedule as they are used to, where they might work with one or two classrooms, but if we need help, they're jumping in wherever they can, and they're really being helpful this year, so thank you to them. Our tech staff, Mr. Brelli in my building does a great job of anything that's needed, and he jumps right in and does it. Roxanne does a great job with the whole tech staff in general, but just anything we need, he does that all while he still teaches classes at both my building and Southeast. And when he doesn't have time off, he's helped setting up maps, data, schedules, getting computers ready for quarantine students and things like that, or teaching teachers new tricks of technology. So thank you for him for doing that. Our coaches and MTSS coordinator, Jen, Lisa, and Molly, I couldn't thank them enough. If it's, like I said, I might call them and say, hey, I have no sub. I'm subbing in this classroom. I have no one for this classroom. They come right over. They don't ask questions. They jump right in. They sometimes have to tag team it because one of them might have a meeting or subbing somewhere else. But they come right over and say whatever we need to do, whatever we can help out with, they're always there for us, so we thank you for that. All of our substitutes right now, the ones that we do have, they're working really hard. We get phone calls all the time. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm subbing in this building or that building. I've tried numerous times to talk to them about losing the numbers of secretaries in other buildings, but they're busy, and we really appreciate the substitutes right now. Teachers and staff, and I know the teachers and staff in the building are doing great things all over the place, but I'm very appreciative of my staff at West Elementary School. They come together. You know, there might be things that are bothering them before or after school, but when that bell rings and those kids walk in the door, it's business, and they're doing everything they possibly can for our kids to give them a great education. I couldn't thank them enough for all the hard work that they're doing. And the last group, the elementary principals, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing right now without them. We used to meet during the day about 4 times a week. Last year we were hybrid and remote and things like that. Unfortunately, with us having to sub all the time, we now meet twice a week. We meet one day after work, and then we meet one day before school even starts, just so we make sure we're still getting that time to meet, to talk about things that are happening in the buildings, things we need to work on, things we need to adjust. But it's great to have them and have them, lean on. We do meet twice a week, but we're text messaging almost every single day. So again, I apologize for any people I missed in this group, but this group is what's making our district work right now, and thank you to all of them. Next slide I want to talk about is things that it's great to see back happen in our buildings. On the far left pictures, I know they're small and they're kind of tough to see, but on the far left, we've got kids in a library this year. And we have a great librarian at West Elementary School. Mrs. Drake does a phenomenal job. For Halloween, one lesson, she blacked out the library. There was orange and purple lights all over the library. Each kid had a flashlight, and they got to go check out books with their flashlights. For the holiday break, she had the whole library was decorated with holiday theme. What she does in there is amazing. The kids love going to the library, but it's just great to see kids back there and checking books out. In the middle picture, we got PE again. It's great to have kids back in PE. I love having our specialist teachers teaching the areas that they went to college for. They're not being our recess monitors or lunch monitors this year. They're teaching those classes, and it's great to see kids back in those specials having fun. And to the far right picture, this is kind of a double whammy here. It's not only great to see classrooms full, but it's great to see holiday parties back in our buildings too. So that picture on the far right is a full classroom, but it's also one of our holiday parties we had right before winter break. So kind of continue on that. So what we have here is welcoming back and things like that, but it is specialist PE, art, music, tech, library. Like I said, it's great to have those back in person. We're doing kindergarten buddies. What kindergarten buddies is, our fifth graders, each classroom teacher pairs up with a kindergarten classroom teacher, and they teach the kids all about everything. What it's like to walk in the hallways, what it's like to ride at the school bus, what it's like to use the bathroom correctly, what it's like to be a wildcat. And that's really important, and I know not only our fifth grade kids really love it, but it's great for our kindergarten kids to see that and have someone to look up to. Theme days. We've been doing a lot of theme days, dress-up days, things like that. It's good to have that back with both staff and students. Holiday parties, like I mentioned before. Battle of the Books, up until yesterday, was back in person. So that's great to see that and have those kids competing against one another here in the community. K-Kids, we are the only building that has K-Kids, and that's part of the Kiwanis, and it's great. Mrs. Sauber does a great job with our kids and K-Kids, and they do a lot of community events that is really helpful. Currently, right now at West, we are collecting all sorts of plastic lids, and what's going to happen at the end is they're going to take those, melt it down, and they're going to make a big bench outside of our school, which will be really cool to see. WSO meetings, that is our PTO at West, but they are back in person, so it's great to have those parents. I think the parents are actually more thrilled than anyone else just to have that night where they can come. We provide daycare in the gym, but it's nice for them to come. The meetings usually are supposed to last about an hour, but somehow we're there for about 2 hours just having really good conversations, and that's perfectly fine. Band concerts, orchestra concerts, choir concerts, we had them live again this year. And even though it looked differently, because we had to do them in different elementary sections, it was great to see those kids up there and performing and seeing the band instructors and orchestra and choir people being able to do what they love and perform and show all the great things the kids are learning. Last week, the art show was here at the high school. It was great to see all that artwork displayed and seeing the parents' smiling faces and taking pictures of their kids because they're really proud of what they're doing. Those kinds of things that we missed out on last year are great to have back and seeing all the amazing things that are happening in the building. Fire Prevention Week, in the bottom right-hand corner, it was great to have them come and talk to our kids about Fire Prevention Week. And some kids got to go out and see how the fire engine sprays the hoses and learn all about fires and what to do in an emergency situation. So it's great having that partnership with the fire department to come over and do that in all of our buildings. And then book fair, we do book fairs twice a year, but it's awesome to have that back in person as well. Getting a little creative with learning. Obviously with the social distancing, and our kids are doing a phenomenal job with wearing masks and things like that, but we have to get a little creative with learning because we can't do some of the things we used to do where it's like everyone come over to the rug and turn and share and pair and think about this or that, or turn to another partner right there on the rug. And so one of the things in the top left-hand corner, our theme is Wild About Learning. We all have t-shirts that say that on there as a staff. On the top left it says, West is wild about counting. And then each animal is a different number. It's 100, 200, 300, all the way up to 1,000. So it's been a lot of fun to see the kids because they're working on how high they can count in the classrooms. And then they get to go sign or put a Post-it note with their name on it, which club they're in. So every time they go to a different club, they then get a prize reward. And that's something Mrs. Countryman, our math interventionist, came up with. And the kids have really been loving. But it's fun to see the kids get to the next level. I'm walking in the hallway, Mr. Schrader, I got the 500 club. I got the 400 club now. I say, well, you're cheating. But it's a lot of fun to see them really striving to get to that 1,000. So it's fun to see that. In the middle picture, this is during one of our win times with our reading group. And what they did, you can't see the books, and I apologize for that, but in the books, it says the books they read was about squirrels' New Year's resolutions. And then after that, the kids worked on writing their own reading resolutions for class. And that was a lot of fun to see that happen. And it's kind of thinking outside the box of what learning should look like or could look like, but it's a lot of fun for not only our staff, but for our kids too. And the last picture on the right, this is actually during one of our win times with our math group. And this particular lesson was the whole class was playing a math game. And what they were doing is they had to build, it looks like a pyramid of cards. But each row, the two students had to pick out 2 cards, and they had to turn that into a multiplication problem. What you were doing, you're having a competition against the other person about who could get to the highest number. So it's a lot of fun just doing something different with cards, but having fun and having a little competition with your classmates. I always like to be very transparent with things about things that are going well in the building, but also challenges that are happening right now. And I'd love to, you'll always love to talk about the great things first, but I don't want to end on challenges. So I want to talk about challenges, things that are happening right now and in our buildings. And I'm speaking specifically at West, but I'm sure there's a lot of challenges that we're seeing across the board. First thing I did forget to put on here, but the printers and toner has been, we all know that it's no one's fault about the toner shortage that's happening. But the printer and copies are taking so much longer because, like in my building, my big printer that rapid fires everything is not working. So copies are taking 3-4 times as longer as they should be taking. Sub coverage is a major issue right now. Keeping positive morale, and it's not that we're not positive, but it's just when you feel like you think you're getting momentum and you feel good about things, and all of a sudden you get 6 kids out at one time, or all of a sudden that staff member goes out. Just that positive morale. No matter what happens, we got to keep being positive. Remote tutor numbers, that's been kind of a big issue. Mr. Jones kind of talked about that a minute ago, about what that looks like for Mrs. Benson, and the onloading and offloading, the contacting the parents, the getting the devices ready, getting the work ready for the kids. That's been a major challenge. Quarantines for staff and students. Obviously it's really hard for the students when they get quarantined. I do think with this new guidance, I do think that's going to really be helpful with going down to the 5 days for the quarantines. We'll see those students getting returned a lot quicker, as well as staff getting back in the building. But the challenge with the staff is it's not the ones that are going to be gone the day before. It's the ones that all of a sudden got that phone call that their kid got quarantined, or they didn't feel good and they went down to the nurse's office and they test, now they're positive. It's trying to find that who's going to cover that situation when you're already doing other things makes it difficult. And that's why this year more than ever we're really relying on a lot of other people that, like I said, are running into the telephone booth, put their cape on, and they're at our building and helping out. The educational momentum with student quarantines, that's been something we've had a lot of conversations about. You're starting a new unit for your math or Eureka lessons. At one point last week, I had 75 students out, so that was 8 to 9 students almost per class. So when you're starting a new lesson, a lot of teachers come to me saying, Ryan, how do I start a new lesson and we get going and they're not going to be back for 10 days? How do I catch them back up when we're already on to a next unit? So those are questions that we've really been working through, and they've been doing a great job. Even though it's hard, they continue to do that. And then, canceling meetings and observations. If I have observations scheduled or a meeting we have scheduled in the building, and all of a sudden 3 of those people are supposed to be in that meeting, or an IEP meeting or something like that, having to cancel those last minute because of staffing issues has been a challenge. And I would say overall, for not just anywhere, but just the overall workload, which we kind of tie this all into one piece here. There's a lot of the overall workload that's happening on a daily basis, where people are coming way before to get stuff done, get their work ready for kids, staying way after hours, or it's at later on at night, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, when we're having a chance to finally return emails, phone calls, and things like that. So I just say that this isn't just talking about me, but just the overall workload across the whole building. I said I didn't want to end on negative things, so I'm going to talk about the positive things. Things that are going well, and these are important ones. Students back in the building full-time. That is great to see. It's great to see kids coming in the building, smiles on their faces. Even though they have masks on, they're happy to be there, and that's exciting. We have a positive paw tickets at West Elementary School. We kind of like a carnival. We have little tickets. Kids are doing great things. Any staff member can give kids tickets at any time. We do a drawing at the end of Friday. We announce all of our winners, and they get to come down to the office. We give them ring pops or ice cream or icy pops or things like that, but we do that every Friday, and that's been a great thing. It's been a lot of fun for staff and kids. We do a class of the week, things either I pick or staff members can pick. Class of the week that they think did something exceptional that week. So we acknowledge them on the announcements on Fridays. They get a pencil, a neon pencil, and then they get some Starburst, and then they're really happy that they're the class that won. It's funny, sometimes I'm walking down the classroom, you hear someone like elbow the other one and say, hey, he's looking. So it's just fun that they know that's happening and it's going on in the building.
Look sharp.
We just recently started Staff Member of the Week. You know, I talk about social emotional a lot, and one of the big things we talk a lot about is our students' social emotional. And I think kind of taking a deeper dive into this, we do a lot of things and spend a lot of time doing what's best for our students with social emotional needs. But one thing I think we did a bad job of is our staff members. And that's one thing I worked with my building leadership team, said, hey, I know our kids are doing good. I said, but I'm worried about our staff. What can we do for our staff? And they came up with, let's do a Staff Member of the Week. So what we've been doing every Friday, we pick one staff member. We do that in the announcements as well. I promise, I keep saying the end of the day Friday. We still do teach a lot. But on Friday, we acknowledge one staff member, sometimes two staff members, for amazing things that they did just for that week. And we get them a $10 Starbucks gift card. It's just kind of a token of appreciation of all that they're doing right now and how much I appreciate what they're doing and how hard it is. So that's been a really positive thing, and I'm very appreciative that our building leadership team came up with that. Win time support has been great. I'm so thankful for not only our math interventionists, but our reading interventionists, pushing into the classrooms and helping out and doing so much for so many students during that win time. And I know our classroom teachers really appreciate that extra adult support to do what's best for kids and working with all those kids on a daily basis. Student interactions, going in the classrooms, seeing those student interactions, having them be kids, having them learn together is something really cool to watch. The engagement in learning, it looks way different when a teacher's not on a screen. So seeing them up on their smart board or seeing them interact in the classroom when they're doing things and watching the kids, it's funny to watch, and especially at the younger age levels, when that teacher walks around in the rows of the classroom, they're just like, everywhere they go, they're just amazed by wherever their teacher's going. So that's really fun to watch. The collaboration between teachers, we've done an excellent job of collaboration between teachers, but I would say, even though this year has probably been the hardest year we've had, I would say the collaboration between teachers, at least in my building, has probably been one of the better years. There's a lot of time for them to meet. We do the late start, so they have time to collaborate. Once a month, they do it as a district level PLC. The other times, they're meeting with their grade level PLC, as well as other times throughout the day. And, a lot of times you met with your grade level teacher partner, but now you're seeing the collaboration of not only that happening, but you're seeing the social worker join in with those, and you're seeing the reading specialist join in, you're seeing the math specialist join in. So it's a collaboration of really not saying this is my classroom or these are my kids, but more of these are our kids, and that's made a huge difference. Student learning has been going really, really well. They're doing a great job. The kids are learning, and that's important. Positive professional conversations, I think that's personal, professional. Those are happening in the building, which is great to see. And then the team unity. I'm just very proud of the West staff for coming together and doing what they're doing on a daily basis to not only help and support one another, but do what's best for our kids. So I end on this picture. Now, to some of you, you're probably sitting there going, what in the world is wrong with these people? Now, I'd be lying if I don't question that same question you guys are having on some days. But for those who are familiar with Christmas vacation, my staff thought it'd be funny this year to where they say, "You serious, Clark?" in Christmas vacation. But they said, it says, "Are you serious, Schrader?" And then they got me a shirt that matched and it said, "Serious." Now, they might look like weirdos, but those are my weirdos. And I can't say enough positive things about that staff right there. It's amazing the barriers that are being broken down and what they're doing on a daily basis for not only kids, but for one another. And I'm super proud to be their second person in charge in that building. And we will continue working hard each and every day. And like I said, I'm just very happy for the staff at West and, well, the staff's everywhere. You guys are doing great. And I'm just proud to be in charge of one of the buildings of all the great things that are happening in this district. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming to present to us and for such a thorough presentation. It was really, really quite good, quite informative. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Next item then would be Superintendent's report.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I just want to thank Mr. Schrader for the presentation again, the work that's going on at West as well as all the schools in the districts. Very impressive this year throughout the pandemic, but especially this last week or so as we work through this surge. So just want to start with some slides that we talk about every meeting, our mission, empowering our learners to succeed in the world. Our vision, to provide an ideal learning experience where students and staff are engaged and want to come back the next day. Our core values, honesty, trustworthiness, integrity, equality, empathy, respect, citizenship, digital citizenship, responsibility, and collaboration. And the five questions that our professional learning communities ask themselves and discuss, and Mr. Schrader talked about the late starts and how that time is used part of that time is used to discuss these questions. What do we want students to know and learn? What do students want to know and learn? How will we know if they've learned it? What will we do if they don't learn it? And what do we do if they already know it? That takes me to the first item under the superintendent's report, which is the property tax abatement qualifying criteria and definitions. That's a long phrase, and really what we're going to talk about, and I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking. I'm going to introduce Mr. Paul Borick here in just a second. Mr. Borick is the executive director of the Dekalb County Economic Development Corporation. Several years ago, they spearheaded the creation or were instrumental in the creation of the enterprise zone in DeKalb County. That enterprise zone has been in place for some years, but the Economic Development Corporation is at a point of working through an amended agreement. So we've discussed that at a previous meeting, shared some of those resources and information with the board. And tonight we've invited Mr. Borick here to be with us and make a few comments, but then also answer any questions that the board may have. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Paul Borick.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Wilder, Chairman Dombeck, and President Dombeck, and school board members. First of all, I'd like to express the appreciation of the DeKalb County Economic Development Corporation and all of our community and taxing body and county partners in the Enterprise Zone program. We value your participation in the program, and the program has been successful in attracting significant development to the city of Sycamore and DeKalb County. The program began in 2016. Actually, we all worked together on an application in 2014. The program began in 2016, and with the city of Sycamore and the school board, joined the program in 2018. Through October, or through the end of this year, 13 enterprise zone projects were completed or were approved in the city of Sycamore, including Nighthawk Video, the BCM Industrial Park, the Meyer Company, 2 Suter Company projects, the Illinois Community Credit Union, Ideal Industries, Seymour, Sycamore, among others. Investment totaled $60 million on the development of over 350,000 square feet of space and the rehabilitation of 650,000 square feet of space. 2 projects are currently underway. The BCM Industrial Park, formerly the Sycamore Industrial Park. Chris Mayer acquired the park. He's the founder of Innovative Growers Equipment, a major industry in the park and in Sycamore, and he's now making significant improvements to the Sycamore Industrial Park, along with the support of the City of Sycamore and the taxing bodies and the school board with the creation of a tax increment financing district. And also Nighthawk Video is acquired a building in the Sycamore Prairie Business Park and is expanding, creating a 36,000 square foot expansion, investing $2.6 million to create a video technology business at that location. Countywide, the enterprise zone has attracted over $1.1 billion worth of investment throughout Cortland, DeKalb, Genoa, Malta, Sandwich, and Waterman, as well as Sycamore. In 2020, in early 2020, the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity approved and certified amendments and technical corrections to the Enterprise Zone program, particularly the tax abatement program, approved by the designating units of government. And these amendments were needed and created to address factors that weren't known in 2014 when we applied for the program. They included enabling significant build-out, rehabilitation, and renovation of existing buildings. To qualify prior to that, the projects were limited to the creation of new space, either a brand new building or an expansion to a building. But we encountered several instances where older buildings were in disrepair and not generating significant taxes, whereby, however, we found development interests that were considering making major investments in the buildings such that they would increase the value and to the building and to the community. And so it was important to enable major rehabilitation to qualify for the program if it would generate a new assessed valuation. Data centers were a type of industrial use or knowledge-based use that we weren't aware of quite so familiarly or quite so well in 2014. They've become significant components of our economy and the national economy. And the data center definition didn't fit nicely within manufacturing or distribution or even knowledge-based industries, which was most appropriate. We also handled our first research and development project. Syngenta Seed Company is building a new research and development center in Malta on Route 38, just west of Kishwaukee College. And the job creation requirement was not realistic at the time when we created it in 2014. We really didn't have any experience with research and development projects. So that was modified from one job for every 250 square feet to one job for every 350 square feet. And finally, it was felt that it would be important to enable speculative building construction to qualify for the program, in particular so that a developer of a speculative building could be able to offer, or so the community could offer to an ultimate user of a spec building, a company that would buy or lease the building and create the jobs and to qualify for the tax abatement so that they could compete with other build-to-suit options. So, and finally, as we did all this, the state of Illinois modified its minimum wage schedule, and so it was appropriate for the enterprise zone minimum wages of $14 average wage and a $11 minimum starting wage to be modified, and they were modified based on a percentage of the state minimum wage at the time, 140% for industrial and logistics, and 160% average wage for knowledge-based companies. All DeKalb taxing bodies have approved these amendments. The Genoa-Kingston School District has, and Indian Creek School District is considering it. All totaled, 19 of the 25 taxing bodies have approved these amendments. We weren't able to bring them forward sooner. At the time these were initially approved, we were consumed with major boundary amendments and incentive amendments specific to the interstate commerce market portion of the enterprise zone located along I-88. These projects were needed to facilitate Ferrara Candy, Facebook, and Syngenta. But, so at this, and also they weren't critical or at the time, but now we'd like to bring all of the taxing bodies in line, if possible, with the amendments that were approved. Yeah, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? I've got a couple. It says in Section 2 of the revised resolution that this would be effective December 1st, 2020. Is it meant to be retroactive back to then?
Oh, I apologize. No, we would, that was the date that was put in place for some prior or other amendments. We could make it effective when the Board of Education would approve it.
Okay.
Thank you. That's a good point.
Another question. I think there are a lot of good things in here. There's just a few questions that I have.
Sure.
I really, from reading this, didn't completely understand clearly what the difference is between a build-out, a renovation, and a rehabilitation. And I just wondered if it might be to everyone's benefit to define those terms a little bit more solidly in the document itself, so that we don't have people, guessing whether or not this qualifies for one of these type descriptions or not.
I think all three terms were meant to be somewhat overlapping, but we'd be happy to make that clear if you would find it valuable. The purpose was to address major improvements that would make a building more useful and valuable, and ultimately generate more tax revenue and accommodate a business.
Yeah. I think that's further complicated by the fact that there's language in there that says abatement shall only apply to the increased assessed valuation attributable to said new construction or said addition. So it seems to foreclose some of those other options that we're trying to include. So I think somehow we need to address that as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think we can clarify that.
Let's see. So these projects would qualify for a 5-year abatement?
Yes, the tax abatement program throughout the countywide portion of the Dekalb County Enterprise Zone, including Sycamore, is a 5-year program.
But for us, it's kind of a 6-year because the first year we have a 0, and then we have a different schedule.
Oh, that's
for Sycamore, right?
That's true. The program allows school districts in host communities to opt for initiation in year 2. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then another question I had was, when it comes to the job requirements, who follows up and patrols or monitors to make sure that those companies really do meet those job requirements?
The DeKalb County Economic Development Corporation, as Enterprise Zone Administrator, enters into a memorandum of understanding with the project developer, the company, and that spells out the number of jobs they must provide or promise to provide, and the wage levels, and then they're required to file an affidavit each year prior to September, at which point we review and certify their qualification or lack thereof and bring it to the attention of the advisory board and the taxing bodies.
Okay, so it's reviewed annually then?
Yes, it certainly is.
let's see, what else I have here? And then I did notice that towards the end of the agreement, it indicates that the administrator of the DeKalb County Enterprise Zone will prepare a report. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you prepare a report that you then deliver to the participants, like an annual report?
Yes, an annual report is prepared and presented to all of the participating taxing bodies through the Enterprise Zone Advisory Board.
So
Presently.
that report, does that go to the superintendent, our superintendent, or how does it come to us, I guess, is what I'm...
Currently, it's provided to the Enterprise Zone Advisory Board. Mark Ekstrom is your current representative on the advisory board. But if you'd like us to provide it directly to the board or other staff, we can certainly do that.
Well, I think if you get it to the superintendent will distribute
Okay.
it to us, so that'd be fine, I think. And that's really all the questions I had, which are probably too many, but sorry.
No, quite all right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your
But otherwise,
consideration.
I think the spirit of the agreement is very good, and hopefully we'll work out the few details here and see if we can get on board.
Thank you. I appreciate your consideration and look forward to finalizing those details.
Thank you. Thanks for coming to present to us this evening. We appreciate that.
Mr. Borak, I have an additional question before you take off, if I may.
Yes, thank you, Eric.
It mentions in this agreement that all of these abatements are at the discretion of the community unit school district, and I know that we talked about that when you originally presented this years ago. What I wasn't aware of were the 13 projects that you mentioned that have been performed inside this economic development zone in that time period. My question is, did any of those 13 projects apply for and receive an abatement, and how was the district? I don't remember in my tenure being presented with that request for that abatement. So if they were granted, I'm just curious how that, who's in charge of that at the school district? Was that something that Kathy Countryman was taking care of it as superintendent, or why wasn't the board notified of that?
Of the 13 projects, only one project just recently was approved for a tax abatement. The other 12 projects participated in the state benefits, primarily the exemption from sales tax on building materials. So just this past September, Nighthawk Video qualified for a tax abatement for their expansion and construction of a new 36,000 square foot addition to a building on Afton in the Sycamore Prairie Business Park.
Okay, so I guess I'm curious then, if they've been approved for that, why we haven't been given that option of choosing which abatement schedule and providing that final approval, as that's how I read this document.
The final approval is vested in the Enterprise Zone Administrator with the concurrence of the Enterprise Zone Advisory Board. With the completion of the project and the valuation of the building, we will reach out to the school board to share information about the project, the fact that it qualified based on investment, size, and job creation, and request your preference for beginning on year 1 or 2.
Okay. I guess then, Jim, I would just defer that to you if that's your reading of how what the process is here. And again, I don't have an issue with it. I just want to understand what our role is in actively being involved in each decision, or whether this is providing carte blanche agreement that providing these terms are met, that we just find out after the fact. That's what I want to understand.
Yeah, I think it's the latter. It is. Once we enter into this agreement, then the authority rests with the board, with the DCEDC board.
Okay. Because it's just terms like at the discretion. Well, if we're never given that discretion, then I don't understand why that section is applicable in the document. That's like I think section 2C is what I'm referring to there. Or, yeah, 2C.
Sorry, bear with me.
But it does relate to what's most beneficial, though, right? There's just a deferral to which, so is that, to your point, Eric, is it, right now, the point that we're agreeing on is the schedule of abatements, but it's on the DeKalb County Enterprise Committee to determine which is most beneficial based on the school aid formula calculation, right? So there really isn't a decision for the board.
No, there is a decision for the board, but yeah, Section 2C is specific to the preference to begin in year 1 or year 2.
Yep.
And it says it's at our discretion, but I don't recall being presented with that discretion, so maybe you're saying that Nighthawk video one, that still is coming up, but.
It is forthcoming. It's still under construction, it was just approved.
Okay. And that was my confusion, thank you.
No problem, thank you.
Anything else?
Is there any way to track like the recovery of the abatement in like later years, how these pan out, or is it just that 5-year window? Just curious, does the Enterprise Zone Committee have any sort of tool like that?
The information will be available once the expansion is completed and the building is assessed, and we can share information. We can provide information about the valuation that was gained, the value of the abatement deferred, and basically the program is only applicable to new assessed valuation, and what it does, it delays the realization of new valuation in return for leveraging the investment and the job creation.
Okay, and again, not to sound, like I don't know what all of this is, but I'm going to dumb it down for myself here. This is the school district deferring the collection of property taxes for a period of time to attract new businesses into an area, right? That's what we're doing here? Okay.
Deferring a portion of the property tax.
Portion of the property, okay. And then the hope is that after we've deferred for a period of time, then we collect those property taxes at a later higher assessed value, and there's people now who are working in the community who are being paid high wages, and we've got this wonderful, business here that maybe wouldn't have otherwise been there had that abatement not have been, that, little teaser have been there early on. Am I understanding this?
Yes, that's correct.
And then, so is there some sort of document or some sort of where are they now, where the past abatements that were given, we can see this one was a real winner, or, well, this one failed miserably and probably, shouldn't have been approved of an abatement, or does that not exist?
It's possible to record that information, and there may be that information available under the previous program with the city of Sycamore and the school board.
And just more for my own knowledge, so thank you. I really do appreciate, though, you coming out and explaining this, so.
My pleasure, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul, for being here. We appreciate it. That's the only formal agenda item under the superintendent's report. I'd be remiss if I didn't take a minute to kind of echo some of the comments that Mr. Schrader made, not just about the West Elementary staff, but about staff throughout the school district. Several people have mentioned the health staff who have worked unbelievably hard. Bus drivers ran buses last week in very cold temperatures, and teachers in the classroom doing unbelievable things, paraprofessionals and administrators subbing in the classroom every day. So it's been unbelievable prior to winter break starting, as well as this surge as we've gotten back. So there was word about the Omicron variant coming, and it has come to fruition. So the number of absences has been high among students and staff. We're hopeful that the trend in the Omicron variant surge that we've seen around the world is sometimes demonstrating a pretty quick decrease as well. So we're hopeful that happens here sooner than later. But in the meantime, things are going to continue to be challenging. It seems like every time we get to a place where we kind of know what's going on and can deal with it, then there's another twist, and it's been unbelievably difficult. So just want to echo the comments that were made earlier tonight by several people really about the hard work that everybody's doing and how much I appreciate it. I know the board does as well, but we'll continue to work through that and hopefully get to the other side of this sooner than later. I didn't prepare any formal remarks. I didn't prepare a presentation tonight, but if there are questions about how the last week or so has gone, I'd be glad to answer those before we move on, if that's okay.
Sure. I got a quick question for you, Steve.
Yeah.
So just been getting a lot of feedback from the community and from stakeholders, as one usually does in situations like this. But I guess one of the things that kind of stuck out to me that I was just curious on, and I'm sure you have all the metrics on it, was related to the COVID safety guidelines set by the county health department. And so I think a lot of times those guidelines, they go out there, but then implementing them is a whole other challenge. And so it's, it's one thing to say, all right, we're going to do all these things, but then to have the back end support to do it is one other issue. So I was just curious how that implementation piece has been going. Do you see any issues? Could you just speak to that piece?
Sure. Yeah, there's always challenges when new guidance comes down the road, and it hasn't come as frequently as it did perhaps last year or at the beginning of the pandemic. It's not been as often, but it still throws us for a loop. There's information provided. The CDC released guidance on December 27th. Did that apply to schools or not? It turned out that it didn't apply to schools, but then they kind of changed course, and then IDPH supported that, but they still haven't released any formal updated guidance. We did kind of get some preliminary information in a webinar this morning. Corey Mock, our head nurse, sat in on that and shared some of that information with us, but it's not quite in writing yet, so we don't have that in writing to look at. But you're right, it's much like a new change to the school code. There's a bill that's proposed, there's legislation, it's approved, then it's got to go through Rules Committee, and then you have to figure out how you're going to implement it. And the new guidance as it comes down from CDC, IDPH, the local health department, happens in much the same way. IDPH interprets CDC guidance, and whether or not it applies to Illinois, whether or not they support that, then they share that out with local health departments. Every county health department is a separate entity. So they interpret that guidance locally, then they share that out with all of the entities, school districts, other taxing bodies, businesses, the general public. So it always comes with some challenges, and I think, again, Mr. Schrader touched on this, I think the 5-day shortened quarantine will be beneficial in a lot of ways, but that also, I won't lie to you, it creates some concern that we've kept people out of school longer for a reason, and it's taken some time to get the medical or health-related evidence to support that. So I think there are positive changes coming, but it always comes with some wrinkles to actually implement.
Okay. And just, I'm not going to hog the microphone here, guys, but just build on a second question then. With like all the staffing restraints that we're seeing, I'm just curious, I know a lot of this stuff is happening, servers and businesses are experiencing really big labor shortages, but specific to our district, can you just speak to maybe how our district is prioritizing those resources to address some of the increased guidelines imposed by the county and maybe how we're grappling with that staffing struggle?
Sure. Resources in terms of
labor, more or less. I'd say labor and time.
We're stretched as thin as anybody else is. A lot of vacancies, particularly, we've had health staff vacancies out there for a while. We filled a couple of those recently, which has really helped. Bus drivers were short at the beginning of the year. We've been able to fill those. But, and Mr. Schrader touched on this, it's paraprofessionals, it's teachers covering other classrooms. It is all hands on deck in order to make sure that students, the number one goal in our school district are our students, and it's a lot of work to make sure that all the classrooms are covered, and there's a lot of flexibility that's required. All of our staff pitch in and do that. And I don't think Mr. Schrader gave it enough detail, but having been a building administrator before, not during a pandemic, just during normal circumstances, it can be a lot. There can be a lot of tap dancing every morning to make sure all your sub positions are filled, and it can be a lot of phone calls. During a pandemic, I believe, and I don't know this for sure, but I believe that every single day, that's the kind of conversations and text messages and can you cover this, or how are we going to do that? Those things happen every single day. So we plug in and plug holes the best that we can. And yet, when you're out in buildings and you see what's going on, you saw the pictures here tonight. Those are typical of what goes on in every school across our district, that we find a way to make it happen and kind of live through these shortages. Again, very hopeful that within the next week to 10 days, we start to see that decrease start to come down and in our students and staff, building up some immunity or resiliency and being able to stay in school longer and kind of get back to a better spot. Hope that answered your question.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Steve, I know we've been talking about shield testing off and on throughout the years. It's been beseeched by delays. Wondered if you could talk, because I've heard from some of the building administrators that is coming sooner rather than later. Wonder if you could update us on what the rollout of that's going to look like and what the communication to the public is going to look like when they can expect to hear that reminder that it's when it's going live and what they need to do, if anything, at this last moment to either opt in or opt out and make that.
So we put that information out, just kind of preliminary, that we're starting at Shield. Families can opt out. There were multiple, I think 3 different opportunities where we sent communication out and families could opt out. So we've been through that process. We've updated the roster. We are in the kind of the final stages of planning implementation at the high school and the middle school right now. So we hope to get a communication out here in the next couple days, surely by the end of the week, that will provide information to families that have middle schoolers and high schoolers. I spoke with high school and middle school administration last week and just kind of talked through the logistics of what that will look like in the schools. Just to be transparent, I think Shield personnel would tell you they've really figured out a process that works really well. But they also know that the first couple of weeks are just bumpy because it's a new process, new protocols and things like that. But there's been some of that conversation within the schools just to finalize those details. We do hope to get more information out to the families this week so that they know exactly when the start date is. We think it may be middle to end of next week. So we'll finalize those dates, finalize the protocols, get that out to families. And really all of that's going to be handled internally. We've got safeguards in place so that students who have been opted out aren't required to test. One of the things that we will make sure that families know is that for any reason, if they feel like we need them to reinforce to their kids, if their children are called out but they've been opted out, help us out to make sure that all students need to do is tell us, hey, I'm not supposed to take this test when it starts. But we have safeguards in place to make sure that doesn't happen. And I think this is going to be really beneficial for us to determine who's positive, provide that testing, that screening testing, hopefully excludes students and staff when they need to be home and recover and then get them back, and get a little ahead of the game with that testing and take some of that testing off of our health staff's shoulders because they're doing all of that within our school district. We have asked for PCR tests outside of school. If an individual is symptomatic, currently the health department is required a PCR test, so we've been doing that. We think that may go back to a rapid test with some of these changing guidelines coming down. But implementing the Shield testing is going to help take some of that testing off of our health staff shoulders also. So hopefully there's a little bit of break in terms of the burden for our health staff across the district at first at the middle school, high school, and then we'll work through implementation at K-5.
Is there anything else we can do? And I know that the county health department is no longer being involved in the contact tracing for anything outside of nursing homes, if I'm understanding that correct. So that burden has now been moved to us, or maybe it was already with us to an extent beyond what I understand. Is there anything that we're doing that's optional, that's above and beyond, that we are able to scale back on to provide some relief to that staff?
I'm not aware of anything that we're doing that's not required or that we don't believe is absolutely necessary to continue working through the pandemic. One of my frustrations with recent guidance and anticipated guidance is that contact tracing support has been moved from the local health department to the state. There is a statewide reporting system so that if individuals test positive, their name is reported to the state. There's a message that goes home, a text message to an individual or to a parent of a child. we were already doing the bulk of the contact tracing within our school district, and now we're picking up that last little bit that the health department did help with, and when there were high risk or outbreak types of situations. I do want to make it clear that it's not that the health department didn't want to do that. They were glad to continue to work with us and provide support. IDPH made that decision and shifted it from the counties back to the state. I would love to see any break that we can get, because the contact tracing is just unbelievably time consuming. It's been really helpful. Because of the way the classrooms are arranged throughout the school district, our health staff really have a good sense of how each room is arranged at this point. So they kind of know situations that may be higher risk or priority, so they look into those in a little bit more detail. But knowing the work that's happened within each school, between the staff and then the health staff within the school, they've got a good sense of where the social distancing is taking place and how far apart students are placed. So they are able to prioritize a little bit more within the schools, but everything that we are doing, we're either required to do or we feel it's necessary to continue doing. So I would love to see some break come with contact tracing, and just in terms of taking the workload off of health staff shoulders. We've talked about that many times. I was frankly hopeful that with some of these changes at the state, we might see some changed guidance with contact tracing. I don't believe that's going to happen quite yet, though.
My second question relates to reports that I've been receiving from community members. I think you saw some of those letters as well regarding mask enforcement in the classrooms and non-compliance issues. I don't know how widespread that is. Obviously, you saw the same reports that I did. Mm-hmm. I guess want to reiterate my view, at least, that I don't believe that that's a burden that our teachers should have to bear, that they shouldn't be the enforcement people in there, but that we do need to take a firm stance as a district on it, and whether politically anybody agrees with it or not, that's just the state law that we're subjected to. And just as much as the community doesn't want political views being taught in the classroom, the classroom shouldn't be the place where they're fighting their political battles either. So just want to reiterate at least my stance, and maybe the rest of the board shares it, that's something I don't think our teachers should have to be fighting on our behalf, and that I hope that we're doing something at the building administration level to make sure that mask enforcement is being applied uniformly, and that issues are being dealt with as they crop up.
Yeah, so I think supervision, whether it's administration or other staff, kind of in the building security here at the high school, for example, there's absolutely effort and action to monitor that. This is a big school with about 1,100 kids, three administrators and a handful of security staff. I think it's unrealistic to expect that they can oversee all of that. Staff have been on the front line in terms of monitoring that and working with students, from day one. It is an extra task to do. It's more problematic probably at some age levels and at some schools than it is at other age levels in schools. When I'm out and about, I see the bulk of our students complying with face mask wearing properly, but obviously there are occasions where they don't. And when that happens, any staff, teachers, paraprofessionals, anybody else who's in the building is encouraged to ask students to fix that. By and large, what I'm told and what I see is that students are willing to do that. However, if it's repeated or they become disobedient, then administration has stepped in and dealt with that situation directly. So I can't wait for a day where we don't have to wear these, where the circumstances in our buildings allow us not to have to wear these. But in the meantime, we'll do our best to live up to the executive order and what's required of us, and all of our staff across the district. And another really good example are bus drivers. These are the people that see students come on the buses first thing in the morning, last off, and they're part of that activity within our school district. They're part of that monitoring, and having done that a couple of times, I've lived through that myself. Hey, let's get the mask on. And really, I can also tell you, whenever I've asked, students have complied immediately. Most often than not, if a student isn't in compliance, it's because they don't have a mask with them, and they will stop and ask for a mask, and we always have extra temporary masks on buses. So it's just another example, but things like that happen across the district. It can be really frustrating to go and remind multiple times, and that's when administration has stepped in when they're notified and they help out.
Thank you for that update.
Sure.
Just one comment on to Eric, just building off Eric's, and I've taken a lot of mic time tonight. I didn't mention this on our committee meeting for Spartan Senate, but I think it's really relevant to Eric's point. There's a digital citizenship campaign that I hear there's rumors on that it's coming to fruition, that Tim Carlson has been spearheading. That in what I've been hearing, it sounds really promising. And we had a panel of students this past Friday who spoke a little bit about, and this is just on being a digital citizen, and it kind of had to do with the TikTok challenges you guys heard with the bathrooms getting, destroyed and things like that. And the students were talking about what are some things that can speak to them, like what would they do? And so Tim made a comment about posters, do posters work? And, when you see somebody dressed like McRuff, does that? And the students were quick to say, no, that is not effective. They don't look at posters. You're not speaking to them. But something I found really interesting in feedback was that they really liked being met online. So having a digital campaign, meeting them online, having that Spartan stretch have some sort of video component that educates people on, hey, when you post a picture, when you do something, it has lasting ramifications. And then the other piece was talking about scared straight. One of the students used the word scared straight. So having just understanding, and not necessarily like scare tactics, I think what he meant was showing them what the harm is in doing some of these things. Where am I going with this, and how does it relate to masks? I think digital citizenship has a lot of parallels to just being a good citizen and being a good student. And I think about our learning vision, and it's creating a safe physical, emotional, and social environment for the students. So I think there's a huge opportunity in this digital campaign for not only being a good digital citizen, but also maybe explaining to some of the students why being cognizant of other people is really, really important on a digital level, right? When you're, texting something mean about somebody, but also about how they feel in terms of, COVID and safety and what's gonna, maybe you're not doing this for you. Maybe you have a personal belief, like Eric was quick to say in the classroom. You might have a political belief on something, but somebody else might feel differently than you, and being respectful of that. So I'm hopeful, and I just want to say this, to you and to publicly, that I hope this digital citizenship campaign acts on two levels and hopefully promotes a little better in-person social interaction at the high school and middle school level for some of the students. So keeping my fingers crossed, and we're gonna see what happens. So
Yeah.
Steve, regardless of vaccination status, our families can opt in or out of shield testing?
They can.
Okay.
And one of the reasons we went with an opt-out model, which meant that all of our students were rostered, and then removed the ones that opted out, was so that if some point in the future, somebody who was vaccinated or somebody who was unvaccinated but had opted out but needed to get tested,
Okay.
they were already in the system.
Yeah.
It's a phone call. It's literally a click of a mouse after you log into the rostering program. So that's one of the reasons that we did that. And my wife and I have 2 kids in the district. Their names are still in there. They don't need to be part of the testing right now for a variety of reasons, but they're still in there so that if they needed to be tested at school, we don't have to go through this long consent process. It's a phone call and a click, and they're ready
And
to go.
it could happen same day, like that quick?
Could happen same day.
Okay.
Shield testing will happen once a week in each school. So it can happen that day. Whether or not they get tested, then the question is, does that happen to fall on the Shield Day testing, or Shield testing day? But with a phone call, they could be consented and ready to go on that same day.
And our families are aware of what days are at what schools?
Not quite yet. We haven't
But
announced
they
that yet.
will be?
They will be. They will be.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Kind of bled over into open discussion.
You sure did. I was
apologize. Any other questions from the board?
Or any other open discussion items?
I can add one more open discussion item. I've heard part of this PTO meeting and talking with the building principals last night, sounds like there's a mixed level of engagement with the remote tutors. So with 100 kids out of the school, There are some who never come to pick up a packet if they're going to be out for 5 or 10 days. It just sits in the administration office, maybe because the kids are completely self-starters and are able to take care of it on their own, or maybe they're just too sick to do the work legitimately. I'm sure that there are others, and I don't have a number, that are trying to take advantage of a very limited remote teaching resource. My question is, what can we do? What are we doing? What do we plan to do to try and fill that gap, especially if shield testing comes in and we start, now that we're proactively testing people and not just waiting for somebody to be symptomatic, what if, if we end up with as many people out as we have right now for a prolonged basis because we're actively testing, and maybe Omicron doesn't disappear in 2 weeks like we're all praying it will, how can we increase those resources and make more remote tutoring options available for those students that are home?
So really good question and very timely. That's been an issue with this surge and the increased number of cases. We've had some conversation about that internally and trying to identify other potential subs who could do that. Earlier in the year, we did send out a survey, so we know that there are at least a handful of staff members who at the beginning of the year were willing to do that. Circumstances have obviously changed, so we'll reach out to them and see if there's still an interest level to do that. It's optional on their part. So we'll look at that. At the same time, the length of quarantine is going from 10 to 14 days to 5. And if that 5 happens to be over a weekend, now you're talking about potentially, 3. So we're also kind of working through what are the consequences of the shortened quarantine when it comes to remote learning. Now we know students are going to be out for a shorter period of time. How does that impact what we're doing? Now we're really treating that like, an extended illness. Typically, a student is out for a day or 2. 3 or 4 is kind of what an extended illness looked like pre-COVID. So are there ways that we can still support them without, utilizing the remote tutoring option, or at least not the way that it looks right now? So we're kind of looking at that very issue from a couple of different angles right now, and whether it's adding resources right now, or looking at it differently, because now students are going to be out for potentially a much shorter period of time. So a really good question. Don't have an answer for that right now, but just know that we've had those conversations, exchanged emails about that here really recently, especially with this new guidance.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Open discussion items, future agenda items. We do need to, I think, maybe schedule a board workshop so that we can work on goal setting. And also, we need to start working on superintendent evaluation. Eric, you had, when you went to the III conference, come across a program, Super Eval.
Correct.
And
they said they'd be happy to host a webinar for us if we wanted to walk through what the tool looks like and how it's been implemented in other districts.
Yeah, and that's just what I was going to say, that it would be nice to be able to have some time to let the people who sell that program give us a demonstration so that we can see what it's like and see if it would be something that we'd be interested in.
Certainly.
The question would be, how and when would the board like to do that? Would you like to take time before a meeting, come earlier and do like an hour workshop before the board meeting, or would you like to have a separate session where we schedule a meeting just for a special purpose?
Either.
Either?
I think my preference would be to have a separate meeting, only because I don't want to feel a time constraint that we have to get done before another meeting. I think given the numerous demands and goals that we probably need to sift through as far as prioritizing the limited resources we have and setting that direction for the rest of the year requires some thoughtful conversation, something I don't want to have rushed because we need to get done.
Yeah. Perhaps Kathy can send out some potential dates, and we can maybe do a survey to see what'll work out best for everyone.
Okay.
But I think that's something we really need to get on top of, and the sooner the better.
Do you want that earlier? 5:30-ish or 7?
That's
I
fine.
think they
Yeah, if we're going to do a separate meeting, you want to
Separate meeting.
Anytime's fine.
earlier?
Anytime.
Oh,
Doesn't matter.
Usually we do those workshops
Early.
5:30. That works for people.
Okay.
That's fine. Should be fine.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll keep the 5:30 workshop time.
Do we have a goal-setting meeting next Tuesday? Okay.
We have something next Tuesday.
We have a
We did the board admin retreat next
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
Not a
Tuesday.
goal setting.
Yeah.
No, it's a
That's
retreat.
next. Following Tuesday?
Facility.
This upcoming Tuesday. Next, okay. I just-
Oh.
Not next, this coming.
I'm fine with using that.
Any other items for open discussion or for future agenda items? Is there a motion to go into executive session for the consideration of matters related to the appointment, employment, or dismissal of personnel, setting of a price for sale or lease of property, negotiations, and imminent litigation?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, roll call?
We have Davy?
Yes.
DeVito?
Yes.
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Wren?
Yes.
Silo?
Yes.
Dombeck?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, we'll take this time to go into executive session, and then we'll be back in public session for our final votes. All right, we're back in regular session. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, roll call?
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Wren?
Yes.
Silo?
Yes.
Davy?
Yep.
DeVito?
Yes.
Dombeck?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
No.
We are adjourned.